career ladder compensation schedule for 2012-13, and at this time we are asking to have approval on that.
I move the governing board approve the 2012-13 compensation plans and revised ancillary salary schedule and adopt the career ladder salary schedule as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Okay, under general, the approval of the proposed action agenda items for fiscal year 2013 for the Arizona School Boards Association Delegate Assembly.
This is the first time we're doing this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So every other time, I believe almost everyone has represented the school board at the delegate assembly without this, I believe.
So last year before I went, I had asked the governing board to make recommendations so that, because I know that we often vote unanimously, but not always, and I wanted to represent the board well. And the recommendations that I received as the delegate was to go with the recommendations that the ASBA committee had made. So we've had some discussion on this, and I think that was the first time that that I was part of it, where I asked for some guidance.
Right. I'm just wondering if we unanimously made a motion which was passed to appoint Tiffany as our representative and to put into her hands to use her general knowledge and her discretion on representing our board and the interests of the board. And I find it petty and micromanaging now to say, you need to do this. Rather than, we appointed her, if we didn't like her, how she represents the board, we shouldn't have appointed her.
Well, I think that it goes back to just a general philosophy on leadership, whether it's a delegated leadership or a trustee type of relationship, and I don't know that we've actually had that conversation. In the past, it's been a matter of we don't really have a job description. This is someone who will, serve in this role, and I don't want to go. I support her going. That's not to be disputed. I thought that I don't think that we can always say like everything ASBA does is something that reflects Creighton School Board. And at the same time, I know that I have opinions that don't always jive with the whole school board. There were a few that I wanted to bring out, and if the board feels otherwise, I'm okay with that. But I thought
I just figure if we, like you didn't want to go, I don't know who else didn't want to go, but she did that. That's moot.
Mm-hmm.
We as a board agreed to send her, and to have her. I realize some of the stuff that comes up in front of the assembly where she'll be representing us doesn't impact us. We have urban and we have rural schools in Arizona, and some of the stuff doesn't represent us. It's totally out of our league. But we kind of like, if someone felt strongly that they didn't feel she could represent us in good faith, they should have said something when she was appointed to this position.
So I don't think it's a question of her decision-making at all. To me, it's a matter of that we don't have these conversations outside this space. This is the only time we're entitled to have these conversations because of the open meeting law. So I think most of the items, like it's a large packet, I've only made 4 comments, and they're, like, if it's something that I would expect her to know my opinions on, I wouldn't chime in on it, but we don't have these conversations every day, and we definitely don't have them even sometimes. So to me, it's not a question of her judgment, but there are some things that have never come up.
And I have been listed as the alternate. I think I was actually elected as the alternate. But I'm not planning on going unless you text me that morning and say, hey, I can't go. But exactly. But I would not take offense at having been appointed and that the board would trust me, but that at the same time you may want to give me instructions. Because I think just as we elect elected officials to do a job, the public still comes to us and other elected officials to say, I've elected you, but this is my opinion on this issue, by the way. So, hopefully it's not to the level of the electoral college delegates that we sent to Philadelphia in whatever, November, December.
So
pretty much know what they're going to do.
Do what she wants you to know.
I will be honest and say that I had not. It is a huge packet, and I've
Yes.
looked at some of it. I have not read all of it, so I wasn't prepared to bring comments because I was of the opinion that Tiffany will certainly understand based on the discussion that goes on, and I trust her decisions. But if other people have comments they want to make ahead of time, I think that's fun.
And additionally, like, I felt it was important to have space to have this conversation because I've been 3 times. And it wasn't really until last time where I felt prepared to like make comments, to stand up when there are folks at the school board conference advocating that we should allow kids to drop out at 13, 14 years old and we should change these rules. I'm like, no, like to me that doesn't make sense. If anything, our board would suggest it's a higher thing. But like, I've been there a few times and some things we talk about, especially because we have our political reports, but there are other things that I think we don't talk about, and I don't know. I mean, would you be? I'm not suggesting. I'm like we tell her this is what you have to vote on, but like at least like give her the opportunity to learn her opinions on some key issues.
What issues did you
What issues
want
did
to
you
highlight?
feel were
Okay.
issues?
Sure. So, just from the very beginning, if you look at page 4, under Advocacy for Children with
It's in
Students
the
Needs,
first PDF. It's broken up into 3 PDFs on our.
Right.
And I'm sorry, you
Maybe
said.
if you could just give the page number.
yeah, page 4,
Find it in the PDFs.
page 4, on the first PDF.
Yeah, it is.
There we go.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, it's a huge packet.
Okay, so this is a challenge that I've had with the ASBA since the beginning. And when I've talked to Janice and other leaders, they say that they don't necessarily disagree, but this is being driven by members. And there are, I would say, this is like the exception to the rule, but most school board members believe that I feel like it's always like, it's not our fault. Like, we can't do better. And so, like, they never take full responsibility. And I feel like in our district, we've always taken full responsibility. And if you want an example, we look at family engagement. And I hear all the time that, like if the families aren't engaged and they don't care, then we can't do anything. But I disagree. Like, we as a district and under Dr. Paredes' leadership executed on academic parent-teacher teams. And we took full responsibility. And I think our approach has always been, we take 100% responsibility, our teachers take 100% responsibility, we expect parents to. What's coming out, if you look at the very first paragraph here, is that primarily the responsibility is someone else's, it's not ours. And I feel like if this is the very first paragraph that's coming out, like it puts ASBA at a disadvantage going into a battle, saying we're not taking full responsibility. And I feel like it permeates every discussion that I've been at through ASBA or NSBA where it's not our fault. Charters, mayoral control, governance issues.
What are you saying?
So-
Because it's saying that their basic life skills must be met primarily by the home and family.
So they're adding right now, every year it changes. And right now they're adding the words primarily. And I think that the way it was compromised last year was fine. That it must be met, that there was a role for the home and family in support of the community, but it's now, like every year this comes up, it's a shift to put it back to, it's primarily someone else's
Hold it,
responsibility.
it's the basic life needs, food, shelter. That is primarily the home and family needs those needs.
So why does the ASBA need to take that position? Why doesn't the ASBA say this is the work that we will do to advocate? This is on advocacy for children and students' needs.
Although I think the previous version does say, I think this is an attempt to strengthen the language that was already in the previous version, because the previous version does read, ASBA believes that for children to succeed in school, their basic life needs must be met, and that the home and family, with the support of the community, the school district, the state and federal governments. So I think either way, I think it kind of says the same thing, but I think this is an attempt to put home and family a little bit more.
Yes, Maslow's lower level, the basic needs. That's done by home and family with the help of others.
I think that this is being driven by another school board, and that's okay, but I feel, and having spent time at the Capitol, it puts ASBA at a disadvantage. It's showing up for a knife fight without a knife. It's saying that it's not our primary responsibility, so we'll chime in on the conversation, but they're not taking it as seriously because of it. That's my opinion, and I feel better having put it on the record.
I don't feel that way. I believe the basic life needs, to make those, to be responsible for the basic life needs is the home and family with support of others. But I don't see the school district, I don't see this community and the state and federal government needing, that's the primary entity that meets the basic life skills, needs.
I think what you're trying to say, correct me if I'm wrong, having lobbied at the Capitol and knowing what a pain in the butt it is, reading this message doesn't resonate with legislators. When they hear this at work, you try to approach the legislature to make changes using this concept, you're not going to be successful. Is that what you're trying to say?
Well,
that
it's not, yes, but it also, if you see, this is preceding all the other points you're looking at. It precedes 1 and 2, and it comes up often. And so when I hear ASBA lobbying, it's our members believe these things to be true, and it's just not an effective thing. I think that we're better served by ASBA if we just don't focus on who's the primary responsibility for these things and just say, like, this is what kids need. Take that information and do what you want with it.
I agree.
I just wanted to put it on the table.
I hope that this is helpful, and I think whoever votes ultimately will also want, maybe persuaded by the conversation that happens on that day.
Right.
I haven't been yet, but that may, I know if that's me and I hear something where it says, oh, this is what they meant, not this, it can sway me as I'm there. So I'm glad that Tiffany will have that freedom.
Don't you want to come with me and experience this? On a Saturday, bright and early?
Oh, it's not like that.
That's great. I'm not an early bird, so Starbucks.
I do understand, just to add
I'll have coffee.
conversation, it certainly is I agree that those are primarily home and family basic needs that are met, but I don't want people putting that in there to escape the responsibility that the community has in terms of the whole, it takes a village to raise a child, and I think we see that in our district as much as anywhere.
I mean, having it part of the political agenda, does it strengthen ASBA or not?
It's the same pushback that we did when we talked about extended school year and people in, I think it was St. David, were, I think they have really very real concerns that in an agricultural community, they probably want their kids home as early in the year as they can to help with the farm. But they live in a very different world, as you said. It's very different.
Next item. If you look at page 15, which I think is actually 16 if you use the scroller at the top.
Still in the first packet. In
Still
the first
in?
PDF.
In the first packet, yes. But the page is 15, and at the top on the thing is 16. I'm looking at item number 11, which it says And then, of course, there's the strike through. Seek and support legislation that provides governing boards with flexibility. Oh, sorry, wrong one. The removal of a governing board member for excessive absences at meetings.
Since this is targeted to one particular person in one particular district.
Yes.
Yeah,
Actually,
but the
there's a
problem
second one.
comes in is that if this becomes the law, I mean, here's the thing. It might be written for one person, but we have over 1,000 school board members, and at the same time, like, I don't know that the governing board should be deciding what this is. Like, for example, and this is looking at our own board. Like, I've missed a few meetings. Matt's missed a few meetings. How many meetings does it count to be
Doesn't give a
excessive?
number, and excessive is an ambiguous word.
Right, and if we've been elected or appointed, there are other processes to remove a board member.
Yes.
So I don't want to. I think the governing board already has a ton of authority, and I don't want to add to it.
So this is specifically authority for the governing board. It's not like a law that if you miss a certain number.
Next one you miss your.
Alrighty.
Okay.
Study sessions.
Study session.
Okay. Page 28. I think we might be in the next packet here. I'm looking for the packet page number 28, which is
Second PDF.
under accountability. Okay, so if we look at the second page, or sorry, second packet, and I think it's page 2, under number 2, this one is about the ASBA's position on charter school finance. And I don't disagree with what's in here, but I also feel that every time ASBA chimes in on charter schools, it actually has reverse effect, and it empowers charter schools, and it makes the ASBA look weak and whiny, and it's the same thing that I brought up in the beginning, where it's not our fault, it's these other entities. So while I don't disagree with the sentiment about charter funding and transparency, I don't know that this is something I feel that the ASBA should take on.
I think they should stand their ground. I mean, if you just, maybe I have a mid-18th century thought pattern, but if you don't stand your ground and fight for what you believe in,
Yeah, but they should be fighting. So this is also, I think, a conflict of interest for the ASBA, because they also have charter governing board clients, which I find interesting. But I also feel that ASBA...
accountable to the public schools. Why don't you hold them accountable charter schools? Why don't you fight to hold charter schools accountable as public schools are accountable? The same standards for each. And fight for that, if that's what you believe in. If you just go in and say, well, I'm not even going to do that because I'll probably lose.
But that's not what this says. This is only talking about finance. But if you
Right.
wanted to look at equal accountability, charter schools can be closed down and are closed down for student achievement, but districts are not. So, like, it's not about being equal
The
of under
funding.
accountability. It's just about funding.
Funding, we have to be transparent on our funding. We started at 645 to do that. And why not hold them the same as us? And they don't, they're not transparent, and they don't have the strict M&O funds and this and that as we do.
So I feel also, I guess it's less, I feel parents choose charters for one reason or another, and there's the accountability that I feel charters actually have stronger accountability mechanisms than districts. But the point is actually moot. I think that it's actually not a school board association battle.
To your previous point, Mr. Chair, about, or Mr. President, about them having any sort of conflict of interest because they have charter school members, their members are by and large public school district members, yet we just talked about something where they talked about having public school board members removed. So I don't see that, they talk about holding school districts accountable, so I don't see that it's any sort of a conflict of interest given that it's equal and equal treatment. So my opinion would be that I don't see a problem with it. I do understand what you're saying, that when the Arizona School Boards Association advocates for something, that sometimes it ends up backfiring, but I think that's a broader and separate issue that perhaps maybe also needs to be dealt with.
We pay for the privilege of having the ASBA represent us.
And that's why I want them to represent us.
And to call Janice Palmer whiny, I don't think she whines at anybody.
I love Janice.
No, what I'm saying is, she might go by this, but I know she's a bulldog when she gets to the legislature.
But we don't set her up for success when we approach education as, this way, like the way ASBA approaches it and the way we do that as a district, we have the no excuses philosophy, and it's such a positive thing in our district, and you can tell when you go into another district. But that's not the sentiment I get from any of this. And when you're at the legislature and you're trying to blame charter schools or trying to blame other people, it just doesn't set you up for success there when you're trying to lobby.
And it's not focusing on what matters, which are the outcomes.
Yes.
It's not that they have tons more money.
They don't, but I think they need to be equally accountable.
I think so too. It's, equality across the board, whether it's public schools or charter schools.
And you think this is a school board association issue, not just a personal issue, because I don't necessarily disagree with the sentiment. I don't know if this is a fight that I want ASBA to pick.
I wouldn't want us having a confrontational relationship with charter schools, because I think it can be too confrontational or too territorial, but at the same time, it is healthy to have a certain amount of competition, not just in the sense of school choice, but to have people who hold each other accountable in the sense of Her Majesty's loyal opposition, or whatever you in Parliament call the minority party. But I will certainly trust Tiffany after listening to whatever is brought up about this.
Okay, the other one, the last one is, I don't want to look for it in the third packet. It's a yes that I adamantly think we should support. So it's probably in the third. It's number 75. I guess we'll just pull it up.
Page 75?
Page 75 on the paper. And it's number 13 under personnel. So with the new accountability measures and teacher and principal evaluation reform, there have been some attempts to make these evaluations public. And I know that, sorry.
You're at number 13. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I got there late.
So, nevertheless, I know that Stand for Children, the School Board Association, all the education entities have fought very diligently to keep these confidential. And they are, as far as I understand, confidential. But I would definitely think that, yes, like adamantly, 100%, that we should fight to keep the evaluations of superintendents and employees to remain confidential, to not be part of the public record.
I agree.
And that's something that I know I fear will come up, and that's something that we should empower the ASBA to really support. I don't want to be all no's.
I agree, and I think the only change that this makes is it already lists superintendent, it adds and other employees, and I think that that's very fair. I think I can see some argument for perhaps the evaluation of the superintendent being public, but not other employees. But I definitely agree with this. I mean, I definitely don't see a reason every teacher. I'm sure there are those who would like to put teacher evaluations on the internet, but I I don't think we're there yet in
I think the
terms
state
of,
board wants to do that.
and I don't think we're there yet in terms of, I don't know how I would feel if we ever did get to a place where I thought that we had a fair evaluation tool, but we're still implementing that. How can we even talk about what the end result is?
Those were the few, there are others that I had strong feelings on, but we've talked about them, so I won't bring them up and rehash old arguments here. But that was the extent that I wanted to bring up. Any other comments or advice for Tiffany?
Have fun.
Drink lots of coffee. Stereo.
Just let you know that there
A little scared.
that a good number of these school board members think that they got elected to be the superintendent, and they want all the, it's crazy, so just be prepared.
So I move the governing board approve the district's delegates to take action on the proposed action agenda items discussed at the ASBA delegate assembly.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Future agenda items. Anything to add? Okay.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Meeting
Last time
adjourned.
it wasn't me that did that.
I don't worry.
I know. Well, you seemed like you were on a roll.
Oh, okay.
Study session, and it's not, but, and in, and we're not having any meetings.
Interesting.